Imagine this, you're in Babylon, 1700 BC. The air is warm, the sky is impossibly clear, and towering above the city is a massive ziggurat. Now, picture a group of priests at the top, pressing strange markings into wet clay by firelight. What are they up to? Are they writing poetry? Secret spells? Nope. They're recording the movements of the stars, trying to decode the cosmic messages of the universe. The original astrologers, if you will. Turns out, astrology isn't just your daily horoscope. It has seriously ancient origins, and it all started right here in Mesopotamia. Ready to dive into the cosmic archives and decode the first astrological texts? Welcome to the first episode of History of Astrology, where we travel through time to uncover the origin of celestial wisdom. Buckle up. Star signs, synastry, and the eternal debate over whether Geminis really are just like that. Astrology today feels like a mix of memes and therapy, with a bit of stargazing thrown in. But let's be real, it has a long and rich history. This is just a book. But imagine a time when the night sky itself was the book, and every bright dot up there was a letter in a cosmic message. Thousands of years before sun signs and newspaper horoscopes, ancient astrologers were looking up at the heavens, tracking planetary movements, and recording what they saw. Why? Not for fun, not for dating advice, but because they believed the movement of the stars mirrored the twists and turns of fate. I'm Nora, your host for this journey through time, and I've been obsessed with traditional astrology for the past 5 years. Why? Because when you study the history of astrology, you realize that you're not just looking at old charts and symbols. You're looking at the way humans have always searched for meaning in the universe. Today, we're traveling back, way back, to ancient Babylon, the birthplace of astrology as we know it. Get ready, because this is where the story of the stars really begins. Alright, let's fire up the time machine, because we're heading back almost 4,000 years to Babylon. No streetlights, no city glow, just pure, uninterrupted starlight stretching across the heavens. Imagine how sharp the constellations must have looked. Now, right in the heart of the city, you'd see a massive ziggurat, a step temple reaching toward the sky, like an ancient skyscraper. And at the very top, a group of priests, the Enuma Anu, scanning the stars. See these marks? That's cuneiform, humanity's earliest known writing system. And what were they scribbling on these clay tablets? Not just myths and legends, though. Sure, they had those too. But mostly, data, observations, predictions. They weren't reading the stars for fun. They were looking for omens, messages from the gods about the future of their city, their king. And they did it so well that, without modern telescopes or calculators, they could predict eclipses and track planetary movements with mind-blowing accuracy. And here's the kicker, this was happening before the concept of planetary orbits. Before trigonometry. Before even the idea that planets move in predictable cycles. So, why were these ancient scholars so obsessed with the sky? And what did they believe the stars were telling them? Let's dive into the world of Babylonian astrology and find out. Alright, let's zoom in on Babylon. Nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, this place wasn't just any ancient city, it was a powerhouse. Grand temples, bustling markets, and at the center of it all, the king. Now, ruling an empire wasn't exactly stress-free. You've got wars, famines, palace drama. And on top of that, you've got to keep the gods happy. Because in Babylon, if things went wrong, bad harvest, bad omen, bad haircut, people assumed the gods were not impressed. And the king? He was the cosmic middleman, responsible for maintaining balance between heaven and earth. No pressure, right? This is where our stargazing scholars, the Enuma Anu, come in. Their job? Decode divine messages written in the sky. Eclipses, planetary movements, unusual celestial events, these weren't just pretty lights to them. They were warnings. And the king really needed to know if, say, Mars looking extra spicy meant war was coming. But here's the wild part. They weren't just predicting the king's fate. They were actively trying to change it. Let's say an eclipse suggested danger for the ruler. Instead of just accepting destiny, they'd pull a cosmic switcheroo, like declaring a dummy king to take the bad luck while the real king laid low. Meanwhile, astrologers were also prescribing remedies, crafting rituals, and even using astrological timing for medicine. So, in a way, they were part scientist, part political strategist, and part cosmic risk manager. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. This wasn't personal astrology, not yet. Know what's your rising sign moments for the common folk. This was all about the big picture, cities, kingdoms, rulers, what we call mundane astrology today. But first, let's talk about how the Babylonians developed many of the astrological concepts we still use today. Alright, let's get into the real reason we're here. How did the Babylonians actually do astrology? So, the Babylonians had a big idea. The stars and planets weren't just random specks in the sky. For them, the sky was a cosmic clock, marking the flow of time. This idea was laid out in their creation epic, the Enuma Elish, where the gods literally designed the heavens as a timekeeping device. One of their biggest discoveries was the ecliptic, the path the sun, moon, and planets travel across the sky. By around 400 BC, they had divided this celestial belt into 12 sections, and yes, these were the early versions of the zodiac signs we still use today. But hold up, before you start picturing your sun sign in the ancient world, let's get something straight. The Babylonians didn't care about personality traits like Cancer's are emotional or Leo's love attention. No. For them, the zodiac was a tracking system, a way to calculate planetary positions and predict celestial events. Here's another twist. The original zodiac wasn't neatly divided into equal 30-degree sections like we have today. The Babylonians based their system on actual constellations, which meant some zodiac signs took up way more space than others. But eventually, for the sake of precision, they standardized it into 12 equal parts, which is why modern astrology keeps that structure. Now, when it comes to actual astrology, the Babylonians weren't doing birth charts just yet. Their main text, like Enuma Anu Enlil, contained over 7,000 omens connecting celestial movements to earthly events. Think of it like an ancient cosmic database, packed with observations like, if Venus rises at dawn, the king will have a strong reign. If Mars appears bright red, war is coming. If there's an eclipse, well, you better hide your king. And while they were doing all this, they were also keeping insanely detailed records of planetary positions, so detailed that they could predict the movements of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn with incredible accuracy. These records became the first versions of ephemerides, the planetary tracking tables still used in astrology today. Oh, and you know how the Greeks and Romans associate planets with gods? That started here too. Venus, Ishtar, Jupiter, Marduk. They linked each planet to a deity, based on its behavior. Venus, for example, was associated with love, war, and fertility, because she was both bright and unpredictable. But here's where things get really interesting. Around 400 BC, we start seeing something new, personal horoscopes. Not just for kings, not just for cities, but for individuals. They weren't full personality readings yet, but they did include planetary positions at birth and basic interpretations. So, why did they start reading birth charts? What changed? Well, let's talk about Babylon's legacy and how their astrology spread across the world. So, we've covered the who, what, and how of Babylonian astrology. But here's the real question. Why did it survive? Why didn't astrology just fade away along with the mighty city of Babylon? The short answer is because ideas travel, and astrology is one of the most persistent ideas in human history. By the 5th century BC, Babylon was no longer the dominant superpower. The region had come under Persian rule, and the old Mesopotamian city-states were slowly losing their grip. But here's the thing, Knowledge doesn't die when an empire falls. Instead, it gets absorbed, borrowed, and adapted by the next civilization. And the Greeks? Oh, they ate this up. They were already fascinated by philosophy, mathematics, and the nature of reality, so when they got their hands on Babylonian star charts, they didn't just use them. They refined them. One Babylonian astrologer even set up shop on the Greek island of Kos, where his ideas merged with Greek thought and took on a whole new life. Sound familiar? That's because this is where the astrology we know today really starts to take shape. The Greeks introduced concepts like the four elements, planetary rulerships, and, most importantly, natal astrology. That's right. Personal horoscopes, the ones based on your exact birth time, didn't truly take off until astrology met Greek philosophy. The result? A brand new system, where the stars weren't just predicting the fate of cities or kings, they were mapping out the destiny of individuals. But more on that later. Meanwhile, Babylonian astrology was also making its way east. The Persians brought copies of the Enuma Anu Enlil to India by the 4th century BC, where early astrological texts began appearing in Sanskrit. Eventually, these ideas helped shape Vedic astrology, which still thrives today. So, even though Babylon itself faded, its astrology didn't. Instead, it became a foundation, a cosmic blueprint that civilizations across the world built upon and reimagined. Think about that for a second. Something that started as marks on clay tablets, made by priests on top of a ziggurat, watching the sky by firelight, turned into an entire system that people still use thousands of years later. And that's why history matters. Because when you look back far enough, you start to see the threads that connect us to the past, and to each other. So, what do you think? Why did the Babylonians first start reading the heavens? And which parts of astrology today do you think they'd actually recognize? Drop your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your take on it. And if you're loving this deep dive into astrology's origins, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because next time, we're heading into a whole new era of celestial thinking. What happens when Babylonian star watching meets Egyptian sky lore and collides with Greek philosophy and mathematics? You get something revolutionary, the birth of Hellenistic astrology, a system so intricate, so structured, that its core principles have lasted over 2,000 years and still shape the way we read charts today. Was astrology just myth and mysticism? Or was it a sophisticated system built to rationalize fate? Join me next time as we trace the moment astrology became a true science of the soul. See you in the next episode.